Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Tom.
Yes, he is. And this is, what is it?
NFGeeks.
That's right, Tom. Very good. You know.
We do shaky hands again?
Yo, sure, we can shake hands, of course, Tom. Yeah, you know, I love you. So,
yeah.
Tom, this is our last episode, and I thought, you know, we would just kind of talk about anything that you wanted to talk about, or do anything you wanted to talk about, and go, you know, go wherever it is you want to go. All right, I'll start us off.
I know you're the boss, so
sure.
I am. Yeah.
Okay. What I wanted to start off with is that, you know, people with your personality type are sort of into constructing, sort of architects. A lot of architects become INTPs. Yeah, there you go. You know, and for example, I knew. Okay, they're not necessarily known for being sadists, but you know, that could be part of it.
Duel of the what are these things?
The coat hangers.
Duel of the coat hangers. You know,
release oh, see, it's
phallic business.
But I know that's bad. You don't want that to happen.
No.
Symbolically.
Yeah.
INTPs are known to be sort of architectural and able to put things together. For example, I knew a boy who was an INTP, and he was into building toy robots, things, and making them work. You know, you'd get them. Yeah. You know what I mean? There would be robots, but you had to put it together and get the wire, and you know, and he really enjoyed doing that. So let's talk about that, because you're into carpentry, and you do that. Where does that come up in your life to sort of build and create? Outside of the cartoons, of course.
Well, like, I guess the short answer is I probably always had an aptitude for it, which I didn't realize I did until I was working at a program for developmentally delayed adults.
That's great. Were you one of them?
I could have passed without a lot of trouble.
All right.
And they had a workshop, and somehow or other I ended up working in the workshop, and which was kind of interesting, because I had my people doing stuff that you weren't supposed to do with people that were developmentally delayed. So I was working on band saws and everything else. And, you know, the staff would come in and go like, "You can't do that with him." Well, do what? He's doing it. And the guy's building all kinds of junk. I mean, I had a great time until I basically fried out and or got fired. Actually, one of the best experiences, to go off on a bit of a tangent, it was like one guy that he was fairly messed up, and I got him to the point of where he disassembled an engine and put it back together again.
Wow.
In fact, my little group, the place I was living in had a decrepit rototiller out in the barn. So I brought the thing into the place I was working. All of my people got a part of the engine to work on. We stripped all the rust off it, put the damn thing back together again. We rigged it to a wheelchair, took it out in the parking lot, and I had my
guy. Cartoons.
I had my guy sit in that thing. We cranked that sucker up, and they could, you know, they sat in the wheelchair and whoever wanted to got to drive the thing around the parking lot, which was a hoot. And I mean, you know, the guy that actually was mentioning who worked on the engine, he was on one side and I was on the other side, so nobody went berserk in the parking lot. And it was wicked funny, because we were driving the thing around, everybody was having a great time, and then we blew the head gasket on the thing. So then I went to a hardware store, and they gave me a new engine, so we put that on it. So, you know, my guys had a great time driving this thing around, and then we actually got a 55-gallon drum, cut it in half, made a blade out of it, so they could plow snow with it.
While they're in a wheelchair with an engine.
Yep. Which is part of why. Anyway.
Well, that's fantastic, Tom, because that really shows your personality type. This kid that I was talking about, he would love to do something like that.
It was wicked fun.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
But,
you know?
but anyway,
and it's ingenious and imaginative, and that's very INTP too. So that's you're a great example of this.
Well, when I crashed, you know, working with those folks, this was back in the '70s, and you could walk onto a construction site and get a job. So I said, you know, I kind of know what some of the tools are, and they said, you know, you can hire me, and if I don't work out, you fire me. How's that sound? He said, sounds reasonable, and it just kind of went from there. And I built houses for a while. Then I ran into a guy that repaired furniture, so I apprenticed to him, and I learned how to do that. And then eventually, I went on my own, and I've been doing that for, sounds scary, but for something like 20 years now.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that. So first of all, what kind of things are you building today in your craft?
Well, it's pretty. I mean, the carpentry isn't particularly interesting. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask that. Like, where does your imagination get to run around?
I can't stop it. So it's like I'm repairing a deck, and I'm imagining trolls coming out of the ground, stealing the wood or something.
Right. But you're not necessarily being imaginative with the deck, where you have like trapdoors. Like, oh, I think this deck would be great with a trapdoor.
Well, it might be, but I mean, in the case of the deck repair, it's one of these things that. In these particular cases, it's a matter of trying to figure out how to repair them without everybody going bankrupt with the amount of damage. So you have to get, in that case, getting creative with you can use this material as opposed to that one. You can use this technique as opposed to that technique. One of the things I talk to my customers about is that I'm good at finding solutions to jobs that other people don't want to deal with, and. So, there's that sort of thing. And I do work for a couple of antique dealers, and since they have to actually resell the objects, it's not like you can do Smithsonian museum kind of repairs because they don't make any money. So it's a matter of like, use various kinds of materials, use epoxies, use whatevers to make the thing sellable and acceptable, and not violate the ethic of the business, and it gets interesting.
You talked about going into your imagination while you do this work. Let's talk about that a little more. When you go into your imagination like that, how deep do you go, and what are some things that always come up for you?
I don't know how to answer that one.
Okay, then let me put it this way: what are some common themes?
Be more specific.
Okay.
Well, this is an example. I mean, it's blowing all over the place.
All right. What kind of stuff that's similar to the other stuff that goes on in your mind?
Give me an example. You're being too nebulous.
Okay. For example, you're killing me. All right. For example, a lot of cyborg stuff. I said this with your cartoons. A lot of synthetic cyborg stuff can be found thematically in your art. And that actually very much relates to you. I'm going to do some NF interpretation. That it relates to you because you are a human, but you're also wanting to be a machine, but you're struggling with your human side.
Precisely.
And you told me, actually, before we did this, that you feel like you're two people.
It got to a point when I was a lot younger. I had a name for my other person.
Oh, great! What was their name? Hey, you know what? Young had this too. So go ahead.
I called him Martin.
Martin,
which I think may have been from Martin.
Scorsese.
No, Reformation guy.
Luther.
Martin Luther. I don't know from where that came from, but. I remember early as a kid, it was like it's so weird. I mean, there's Tom A and there's Tom B. I mean, it's like
that's exactly what Young said. So maybe he is an INTP, because there's this whole thing where Young said the same thing.
And sometimes it's really frightening that it's that extreme. And I mean, it's trying to make a decision. It's like there are really like. It's like two heads. I mean, do this, don't do that, and it's like it's almost sometimes it's impossible to make a decision because there are so many variables. There's an aspect, compassionate, kind, loving bunnies, and the other one wants to bite their heads off and drink the blood. I mean, everything is an extreme, and everything really knows. Are you familiar with the Hannibal Lecter series of books?
Well, just the movie, but
we should read the books.
Okay.
Because there's a point there where there's a protagonist who's a detective who is the guy that actually catches Lecter, and in the course of a conversation, he gets into the business that he is not very much different than Lecter is. The difference is that the compartments in his mind, the walls are much more rigid than they are in Lecter's, where everything sort of bleeds over from one to the other. And Lecter scares the hell out of him one day by saying, you know, we're the same person, we're alike. You just are doing a somewhat better job of containing the horror and the glory from one box to the other. You know, there are days I scare myself with the stuff that comes up in my head, and there are other days, I mean, you know, I've actually had mystical experiences, as weird as that sounds.
Okay, no, that's fantastic, because a lot of INTPs feel that they have, you know, mystical experiences.
Prophetic dreams, the whole, you know, Zen Satori thingy, and how much of that is bad neurological function, and you know what I had for lunch, and how much of it is, you know, the great whoopee coming in from the outside. I don't know. Yeah, and videos I did with Brad, your earlier incarnation, and we got to get to that about what's going on with Brad and him. Okay, is because we'll get into that. It's kind of like the once and future person, you know.
Yes, like, we had several videos about mysticism and whether your personality type was capable of mysticism, or were you actually experiencing mysticism the way my type does? And you know.
Well, then I guess how do you define mysticism?
Oh, exactly, exactly. I call it I make sure when I'm talking about mysticism that I'm talking about the mystery and not magic. It's often interpreted as magic, and really I mean is the mystery, meaning that experiencing reality, having a subjective experience of something that cannot necessarily be explained irrationally, and so it has to be explained metaphorically, but even that's not catching it, so there's always a part of it that is unknown.
Well, there are what I think is fascinating is the whole business about, well, one of the most interesting things for you familiar with the scientist Oliver Sacks?
No. But go ahead.
You would love his stuff.
I'm sure.
He's known principally for his first book was The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, and he deals with individuals who have had profound neurological damage, and and how their perception of reality is astoundingly distorted. You know, people who only live in short-term memory. I mean, their entire lives are this long, repeated over and over again because they can't file new data. But, for example, when you see something, when you experience something, there's a delay. So in a sense, everything that you're experiencing isn't really what you're experiencing because it's gone through a filter and it's gone through a certain delay process before it actually gets interpreted. Which means, you know, it's very easy to sort of segue into Buddhism with the whole business about what you think is real isn't real because of it's a function of your neurology.
Sure.
And to me, that's
Kant
astounding.
said the same thing.
I'm sorry?
Immanuel Kant said the same thing. German idealist.
Yeah, I only know the name.
Yeah. Something similar. He was on a similar thing.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, because we only got a minute.
Okay.
Going, because I want to explain this thing, and that is that, you know, I want to make it clear that Tom isn't actually Tom. That's a facade, and that really Tom is Brad. Okay, so watch the Brad videos, and this is Brad from the future, who's come back to either advise Brad or to screw Brad up or to screw me up. I don't know.
So we actually are the same creature.
Yeah.
We are the same entity.
Yes. Yes. You've traveled back in time to do some sort of nefarious thing.
Now, is there a later version of me still like this? Is there the cybernetic Brad Tom, who has undergone complete transformation from organic to material?
You mean the dream you can't even dream because it's so beautiful? That dream?
No, the version of us that just got rid of the whole, you know, organic thing and now exists farther down the future line that is completely synthetic and robotic,
I don't know,
or just exists in the interweaves.
Well, we'll never know because we're at the end of our time. So, Noah, take us out.